There are two types of tennis fans. The ones who said Alex de Minaur wasn't a top 10 talent because he was an average player, and the couple of fans who did believe in his upside but didn't know when he would crack the top 10. If you fall into either category, it's okay. I'm not judging. I just want to talk about Australia's #1 tennis player. How did Alex de Minaur crack the top 10 without having any major weapons, and what can we expect from him moving forward? Okay, we all know that Alex de Minaur is going to fall out of the top 10 because he's been injured for quite a while now. He hasn't played a singles match since that hip injury caused him to withdraw from his quarterfinal match against Novak at Wimbledon. And although he competed in the doubles at the Paris Olympics with Alexei Popyrin, the pair crashed out in the first round. In that match, we saw that de Minaur wasn't moving well at all. Not being able to defend his 750 points for reaching the finals in Los Cabos and Montreal, and also having withdrawn from Cincinnati, he's now likely going to fall out of the top 10. But that doesn't change the fact that de Minaur has had a great season that we absolutely need to talk about. And it makes a lot more sense when you take a look at his career trajectory so far. As a junior who peaked at world #2 and then had former world #1 and two-time Grand Slam champ Lleyton Hewitt as his mentor, de Minaur's stocks were certainly on the rise early on. And after turning pro in 2015, de Minaur spent the next 2 years learning the ropes. But this guy really knocked it out of the park in 2018 when he took the huge leap from outside the top 200 all the way to the top 50 after making 2 ATP finals. But it didn't end there. De Minaur was already kicking everyone's butts at the ATP Next Gen finals, beating some of the current top players, Rublev and Taylor Fritz, before losing to Tsitsipas in the final. Before the end of the year, the Demon had already replaced Kyrgios as Australia's highest-ranked singles player, and was also voted by his peers as the ATP Newcomer of the Year in 2018. Okay, now you can see why it was so easy for everyone to hop on the bandwagon. It's usually what happens when a new talent arrives on tour. 3 ATP titles followed in 2019, and a US Open quarterfinal appearance in 2020. By 2021, de Minaur had made his top 15 debut, but he only spent a week there before he was kicked out. And for the next 2 years, he wouldn't return to that spot. 2023 was a great year for the Demon, who finally won an ATP 500 title, returned to the top 15, and made it to 200 ATP career wins. And now, here we are in 2024 with all the hard work paying off. So let me explain why many tennis fans flocked to that first category of fans we talked about, the ones who didn't believe Alex de Minaur could be a top 10 talent. If we were to draw a graph depicting de Minaur's trajectory so far, it would look something like this. Looking at his path, you'll notice that it didn't seem like there was much growth over a large stretch. From 2018 to 2022, he was mostly stuck at the lower end of the top 20 and the mid-30s. So like I said, it's easy to see why some people wrote him off as just another grinder on tour because they just didn't see any significant growth. And really, when you look at the reasons behind the decision, they do seem logical because de Minaur wasn't making the type of linear progress we typically see from players his age. We could point out a number of factors, or what you may call deficiencies in his game at the time. Here they are in no particular order. He stands at 6 feet tall, and now some fans still argue that de Minaur and Alcaraz are half an inch shorter than 6 foot despite what their official height is. I don't know, but I do think de Minaur is 6 feet tall, just going from the eye test. Anyway, at 6 feet, de Minaur didn't quite hit the sweet spot for the perfect height of a tennis player. As a result, these next 2 parts of his game were directly affected: his serve and his length and reach. But that's not all, there were many more problems. With a relatively light body build and frame, de Minaur also didn't quite have the weight of shot needed to trouble the most elite players, which invariably meant that he was mostly bullied on court when he faced these top dogs. But hold up, we aren't even done yet with the so-called shortcomings. There's more. Fans also had an issue with de Minaur's technique. His really flat ground strokes were often accompanied by a high number of errors and poor performances on clay. Sounds like too many problems for a top professional player. But de Minaur had one weapon that was capable of neutralizing all of his shortcomings. That was his speed. Now let's talk about the speed of tennis players for a moment. I did a lot of research trying to find objective data on who the fastest players on court really are, and here's what I found: nothing. Was I surprised? Not really. You see, there are a lot of factors to consider when talking about the speed of tennis players. These are the dimensions of a tennis court for singles. Considering the vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and other movements tennis players make on the court, you'll notice that players don't even run more than 50 feet in one single direction, which doesn't really give them enough time to achieve top speed. So since we can't really measure top speed, let's move on to other metrics. There's also the concept of fast feet and reaction time, which usually go hand in hand. It's a more practical metric for determining the speed of players on court. Generally, the quickest players have the fastest reaction times, which translates to speed of ball retrieval. With no universally accepted metric system for analyzing speed, it all comes down to the eye test and general consensus among players. In the 2010s, most agreed that Gaël Monfils was the fastest player.
Who was the fastest player on tour?
Gaël Monfils.
Maybe Monfils?
Monfils.
And right behind Le Monf was Andy Murray, who still had 2 non-metallic hips at the time, I should add, and then Novak Djokovic. I always thought Djokovic was faster than Murray though. Maybe I was wrong. But anyway, we also had Lleyton Hewitt, who was also known for his speed back in the day. When Alex de Minaur burst onto the scene, it became clear that he didn't have many rivals in the category. He was compared to prime Lleyton Hewitt, but the general consensus among his colleagues is that he's arguably the fastest on tour. So how did Alex de Minaur become this fast? According to the man himself, his footwork was messy when he was 11 years old because his feet were already size 11 by then. But they didn't grow after that, so literally he grew into his feet. But he says that his speed and court coverage was born out of the desire to not give up on any single point. Even with de Minaur's unparalleled speed, there was only so much he could do without other weapons, which is why he plateaued and hit a ceiling. And to make matters worse, his head-to-head against top players was absolutely terrible. Not including the United Cup and ATP Cup, which honestly many fans don't really care about, and of course not counting walkovers, de Minaur is 0-9 against Zverev, 1-11 against Tsitsipas, 0-2 against Alcaraz, 0-7 against Sinner, and 0-2 against Novak. 1-31 against these 5 players. That's insane. And that single win came against Tsitsipas in Acapulco this year. To be fair, de Minaur performed better against the other guys. He's had some big wins over Medvedev, Hurkacz, Rublev, and others, but it's easy to see why many fans thought he didn't have the game to trouble elite opponents. Safe to say, the results have been abysmal. But what we didn't know was that behind the scenes, de Minaur was making a lot of progress, which we didn't even know about. Seeing that his size and technique were his 2 biggest problems, de Minaur started working on both of those areas, adding that extra 1% every now and then. It kind of reminds me of a book I was reading called Atomic Habits, where the author talked about the compounding effects of a simple routine. Over the last couple of months to a year, those little additions from de Minaur have compounded and to great effect. But what did he do? The first thing de Minaur did was hit the gym. Before now, he'd been doing all sorts of leg drills, including training on the beach to improve his quickness and speed on the court. On top of that, he's now added weight training to bulk up. Now you might be wondering how that helps him become a better tennis player. I mean, getting bigger should make you slower on the court, right? Well, it depends on how you go about it. While bulking up doesn't directly translate to becoming more aggressive, it pays dividends in the weight of shot. And that's an area of improvement we've seen from de Minaur. It's plain to see that he has more zip on his forehand. I compared forehand quality from 2022 to that of the last 52 weeks using Tennis Insights data. De Minaur's forehand in 2022, way below tour average. Now let's compare that with what the forehand quality has been in the last year. We see here that he's just about leveled up. It's actually even better than it looks because this is a 52-week average, and de Minaur in the weeks before his injury was going absolutely berserk on his forehand. My guess is that there's at least an extra 5 miles per hour on it. De Minaur has also been opening up the court a lot better with great angles, especially on his cross-court forehand. Also, the Demon was notorious for hitting forehands that had almost 1,000 RPMs less than most ATP players, which literally meant that he had no margin for error when trying to dictate points on his forehand. It was basically a similar story with his backhand, which is why we sometimes saw him spraying errors all over the place when he tried to dictate points. But he's added more spin to his ground strokes and makes fewer errors on offense. We can also point out another area of improvement on his serve. As one of the shortest guys among the game's elite, de Minaur just doesn't hit the lines. He was terrible at spot serving and was by far the least accurate server among the elite players. And we all knew that no amount of technical tweaking or coaching would make him start serving like Hurkacz. Still, we expected some small improvements, and at the moment, de Minaur continues to clean up technical problems on his serve. He's also added some extra zip on the serve, and we've seen the results on court. Let me take you guys back to his French Open win over Daniil Medvedev, where he actually served not only faster, but also better than Medvedev. Now, I couldn't have ever imagined that myself. De Minaur was clocking a 123 mile/hour average on the serve, and it paid off big time. De Minaur has shown that he's capable of hitting the lines as precisely as, say, someone like Andrei Rublev or Dimitrov in some tournaments. If he could sustain these improvements for weeks, it would certainly lay the groundwork for a longer stay in the top 10 whenever he returns to play. Another big area of improvement in Alex's game is on the backhand slice. He has added in the backhand slice to great effect in his game, which makes it hard for opponents to attack when done effectively. And considering how good a mover he is, it made total sense to see that part added to his game to make it even harder for opponents to attack him. But not just that, it prolongs rallies, and it's also effective in dragging his opponents out of position. For someone like De Minaur, who has the shot tolerance and endurance to back this style of play, we've seen the backhand slice pay major dividends, especially on grass, where he won a title and cruised to the quarterfinal at Wimbledon before being stopped by that injury. And then we have his net game and volleys, where we now see the willingness to move towards a more transitional offensive game. Now, I have to say that none of this analysis matters without taking into consideration the biggest factor behind Alex de Minaur's top 10 breakthrough. Let's take a listen to the man himself.
I think my whole career has been sort of gradual improvement. Over the years I've worked hard, I've improved little things here and there. Physically, I've added a little bit more strength, a little bit more weight around my shots. Then my serve, over the years I've gotten a little bit more pop. But I think the biggest difference probably at the start of the year was just my mentality to be more aggressive. And it's something that I've always had, but probably in the past I've relied a little bit too much on my speed and become more of a defensive player. But I've always had this, aggressive mindset of mine that I can bring out, and kind of convinced myself if I wanted to be the best players in the world, it was the only way. So it's worked so far.
How many times have we talked about how talent without the right mindset means nothing? I'm sure you have a few examples of talented players with the wrong mindset, and I'm not naming names. Let's now look at the statistical implication of De Minaur's improvements in all of these areas. Take a look at win percentage. It's the highest it's been. It's the same thing with set win percentage, hold and break percentages, first and second serve points won, return points won, and the dominance ratio, which is a percentage of return points won divided by the percentage of service points lost. I should totally mention that no man has won more return points than the Demon this year. It's nothing too crazy at first glance, but the truth is that De Minaur has made small, realistic improvements across the board. He's been keeping his eye on the ball, and now he's really knocking it out of the park. I should also mention that one important factor behind De Minaur's top 10 status is his long-term partnership with Spanish coach Adolfo Gutierrez. They've both been working together for more than 15 years. How old is De Minaur again? 25 years old. You see, De Minaur was born to a Uruguayan father and a Spanish mother in Australia. He then moved to Spain as a toddler and spent the better part of a decade in Europe before eventually returning to Australia. Even after leaving Spain, De Minaur and Gutierrez stayed in touch over the phone, and De Minaur also visited Spain during the summer before finally reuniting with Gutierrez. De Minaur has certainly prioritized stability in his working environment over anything else, and while this isn't a subtle dig towards players like Holger Rune and Tsitsipas, I believe they can take a page out of De Minaur's book in finding some stability around their coaching situation. The Spanish coach, recognized as June's ATP Spotlight Coach of the Month, explained that loyalty and mutual trust were the keys to a productive relationship between both of them. I should also point out that De Minaur added another person to his coaching team last year, bringing in Australian Peter Luzak on a part-time basis. Peter, a former Davis Cup player, has also coached fellow Australians Jordan Thompson and former tennis player John Millman. And then there's also former world number 1 Leighton Hewitt, who's more or less a mentor to Alex at this point. I could go on, but the point is, De Minaur has surrounded himself with the right people and created a healthy environment for his growth. So that's what I think about the improvements for De Minaur, but there's a lot more to the conversation. Tennis fans also have their opinions on the Aussie, and here's what people are saying. De Minaur has maxed out his talent and has peaked. He was lucky to get to world number 6. Of course, I don't totally agree with that statement. I think De Minaur's done a great job maximizing his physical potential. I know it's pointless to say, but imagine if he was only an inch or two taller. I have to be honest, during those years that De Minaur plateaued, I did not see him getting to world number 6. So to me, it's super impressive to see everything he's accomplished over the past year. But at 25 years old, I wouldn't say he's peaked just yet. Now, I know there are questions about his durability, especially considering the extreme physicality of his game, and questions about how his body's going to hold up over the long term. People said the same thing about Rafa Nadal and are saying the same thing about Carlos Alcaraz, so I guess only time will tell. De Minaur is just a light version of Lleyton Hewitt, or maybe a poor man's version of David Ferrer. His game isn't the most fun to watch. Coming from a casual fan, I can understand. De Minaur doesn't have the major weapons to trouble elite opponents, so instead he resorts to grinding, relying on his physicality to wear his opponents down. I can only imagine how pissed off some players are when they face this guy. He tracks down every ball and manages to get back shots that other players wouldn't have even attempted to go after. That never say die attitude, the consistency, work ethic, and willingness to grind out results is something Hewitt and Ferrer were known for. Neither of them were the biggest physically, but they made the most out of what they had. Still, it's unfair to compare their talents. I should also point out that De Minaur is equally capable of intelligent point construction, and while he doesn't often have the shot to hit past opponents, no one should take away the fact that the Demon is now more proactive on offense. He just doesn't wait for mistakes anymore. He's taking the initiative earlier in points. De Minaur entered the top 10 the hard way with his brand of tennis, and I don't think anyone can take anything away from what he's achieved so far. The Demon has now reached the quarterfinal of every slam with the exception of the Australian Open. A little ironic, I guess. He's the first Australian to enter the world top 10 since Lleyton Hewitt in 2006. This year, De Minaur has beaten Djokovic, Taylor Fritz, Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas, Ruud, Dimitrov, Rublev, Nadal. Yeah, I know Rafa isn't the same anymore, but how about that for a hit list? 2 titles this year, plus another final, and a career high of world number 6. Now he's in the mix for the race to the ATP finals, as well as a top 10 year-end finish. But now that he's been dealing with a major injury, what happens next? De Minaur has already traveled to Belgrade to train with former top 10 player Janko Tipsarevic as he continues to work on his recovery with the US Open in his sights. No doubt he's proud of everything he has achieved and for proving the doubters wrong. But what a journey so far. From being known for only having the fastest legs in the locker room, to now possessing elite returning skills, a bulked up serve, and a better forehand that continues to add more zip as well as RPMs, we can now confidently say that Alex de Minaur has proven himself to be a bona fide top 10 player. He's an outside contender for slams, and his top 10 stay is no fluke. It's the result of hard work and the desire to break the mold through simple and consistent habits. But over to you guys. What are your thoughts about Alex de Minaur's 2024 season and his staying power as a top 10 player? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And with the US Open around the corner, we have some awesome content coming your way, so be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications if you haven't already. And if you take a look at the link in our description, we just launched our Discord community. It's a place to talk tennis with me and other like-minded tennis fans. I can't wait to connect with all of you up there. Until next time, keep going for the lines.